Oh, Alex said they flew west over the city and then went all the way up the main line. Hi, Mom. Hi, Cameron's mom. She's probably long gone. Hi, Tiff. I'm sure Tiff is on like 7 meetings. Hey, go mom. Go mom. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So today I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about segregation in Philadelphia in relation to the Great Migration and post-Great Migration, and also just talking about the impact that the Great Migration had on white America. That was one of the questions that I forget who asked that question. If you remember who was the person that asked the question, you could you can say I did in the chat box. But someone wanted to know how did it affect white America? And so I think we answered pretty much all the other questions. The only one we didn't answer was why did the Great Migration stop, which we'll talk a little bit about. Okay, yeah, it looks like we answered the rest of the questions that you guys had. So the only other thing you wanted to know was how did it affect white America? So I think it's important to get into what happens in Philadelphia as a result of this influx of Black people into the city. And then what Philadelphia looked like during that time period. For those of you who couldn't join us yesterday, which was the majority of you, we had a special guest yesterday. His name is Luther Ridgway, which is my dad. Oh, shoot, happy birthday. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad. See, this is why you can't look at the comments when you're in the middle of talking. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love you too, Ethan. Oh no, Cameron's giving her birthday punches. I can't deal with y'all today. Not today. So we had my dad on yesterday, and I think I told you guys the other day that he came from Alabama during the second wave of the Great Migration. So as he gets older, he's opening up more, and I've learned a lot of information about his time, like how he came up, why, and then like what type of life he lived before he left the South, and then what type of life he lived when he came to Philadelphia. And so we had some issues with the video, so I'm going to go back and edit it and then re-upload it. And then those of you who were not able to see the interview, it's a short one, but those who were not able to see the interview will be able to see it. So I'm going to go to presenting. Ms. Williams, if I miss anything important in the chat box, let me know.
Tiffany's turning 16 on Saturday.
Woo! Sweet 16! Aw. Those were the good old days, Ms. Williams.
I know. My goodness.
What I wouldn't give. Just to go back just for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why this is asking me for my, but I'm not going to pay this any mind. Okay. For some reason, I got logged out of my school district account. And it's not letting me, it keeps giving me that notification. Let me try to figure this out. Okay. Have you been able to take roll, Ms. Williams?
Let me go and see. Mm-hmm. So it might be taking roll for me. Maybe even at this moment, it looks like it's doing a counting thing.
Mine just did the same thing. Oh, snap.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Whoa, it took roll the other day too.
Yeah. Do you Yeah, now you see the spreadsheet with all the days and all
Whoa,
the students.
yeah.
And it takes multiple, it actually takes multiple, it takes roll multiple times within one period. So you can see at different periods when certain students aren't in class and then when they are.
Oh. Oh, snaps. Hey. Hey. Okay. So tomorrow is our last day of class. So Tiff, we don't have to sing happy birthday tomorrow. So just be prepared. Make sure you come. Did you see what Cameron just said?
Well, I'm like, hush, Ken, this is new. You knew it wasn't doing this last week.
Excuse me.
They just added that.
He just came at us. Oh, no, he did.
Just because we're not 16.
Oh, we getting better, though, so. Oh. He came at our neck. Oh, now I got whiplash. Oh, that was so corny. Okay, let me stop making jokes. All right. Okay, so we're gonna, of course, start off with our meditating. So we're all going to do some deep breathing. Once this music starts, here we go. Okay, everybody breathe in and release. Deep breath in. 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 And release. Great. All right, so here we go. So hopefully you guys have heard of a man by the name of Langston Hughes. If you have not, you have missed out on a great thing, and I'm going to need you to look this man up when we're done with class today. But to start off, I am going to play for you guys a poem written by the late and great Langston Hughes, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
This poem is called One-Way Ticket. I pick up my life and take it with me, and I put it down in Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, Scranton, Harlem, any place that is north and east and not Dixie. I pick up my life and take it on the train to Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Seattle, Oakland, Salt Lake, any place that is north and west and not south. I am fed up with Jim Crow laws, people who are cruel and afraid, who lynch and run, who are scared of me and me of them. I pick up my life and take it away on a one-way ticket, gone up north, gone out west, gone.
We are not listening to you right now, sir. No crash course today. All right. So, what do you think Hughes' poem means? What do you think he's talking about? What is he alluding to? And for those of you that were here yesterday, is there anything that Mr. Ridgway talked about that reminds you of this poem? So I'm going to give you guys 30 minutes, or 3 minutes, not 30. I'll give you 3 minutes. And for those who don't want to verbally say it, you can just type your response in the chat box. Yes, you're right, Miss Wood. Miss Wood. And the lady, this is Cities. It goes. Lydia, you travel all over the country. Yep. Good, Siani. Oh, hi, Christine. Yes. Good. So we're getting some good responses in here. Miss Williams, did I miss anybody before Lydia? Did anybody comment before Lydia?
I'm sorry. No, no, you didn't. You got it. One more. I'm sorry. Rose said he's making life into a metaphor for luggage, emphasizes the sort of escape that migration was from fear, which he explains goes back and forth.
Wait, can you say that again, Miss Williams?
He's making life into life. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Making life into a metaphor for luggage, which emphasizes the sort of escape that migration was from fear, which he explains goes back and forth.
Good. Good job, Rose. Okay, and I see so we have Lydia. She said he traveled all around the country. The way he was in the cities made it seem way more focused on the leaving of the South and the arriving at the North. Miss Wood said the way Mr. Ridgway didn't exactly know where he was going until he spoke with the bus driver. Siani, he's picking up his life as he begins a new one, as he tries to escape the South. Christine, he wants to go somewhere that doesn't have the Jim Crow laws. King, One-Way Ticket is a poem that describes the experiences in the Great Migration. It symbolizes that leaving the South is a one-way route and there is no going back. Awesome. Awesome. Great responses. And James said ditto. I think that's what that arrow is. Yes. So yesterday, as my dad talked about his journey from Alabama to Philadelphia, two things that stuck out that this poem, when I first heard this poem after I learned my dad's story, I was like, wow, it really struck a chord. And my dad said when he went to the bus station, as Ms. Wood put in the comments, he did not know where he was going. He asked the bus driver where he was going. The bus driver said Philadelphia, and he brought a one-way ticket. And that was it. There was no returning. And he didn't talk to his family for years after that. It took, I think he said, about 4 years before he made contact again and told them where he was. So for a lot of people, this was a way of escaping. For him, it wasn't more so, he had a very unique story in that he didn't experience, like he heard about it, but he didn't experience the terror really that a lot of other Black people in the South experienced. But he also, on a phone the night before, admitted that he felt like Black people in his community also were, like, they knew their place. So there was, like, you knew there were certain places you couldn't do, you knew there were certain things you couldn't do, but in terms of, like, seeing someone get lynched, he never witnessed that. Obviously he heard about it, but that wasn't something that he witnessed. And it wasn't until he came up north that he experienced this, he experienced being called the N-word, and he talked about that story yesterday. So we're gonna try to, I'm gonna edit it and get that video and the one before that up for you guys ASAP, so that you can be able to watch that. So someone had a wonderful question the other day. I forget who it was, but they said, what impact did the Great Migration have on white America? And I think this question is really important because when we're talking about African-American history, a lot of times we just focus on the effects that these things had on Black Americans, the things that happened to them. And really, there are two players in this story, right? And the other player is white America. And how did these things affect them, the community? And we're going to talk a little bit about the economic impact of the Great Migration and how the effect it had on the South and also on the North. And then that is kind of going to be our segue into when we talk about what was it like in the North. And in particular, we're going to zero in on Philadelphia because we're from Philly. And so regarding the Great Migration, the Northern white businessmen were actually really happy about it because they were able to get labor, lots of labor, and also cheaper labor. On the other hand, Southern white businessmen were not happy about this because they were losing their labor. And so for some of them, white Southerners reacted in two different ways, okay? The first way they reacted was, we need to stem the tide and the flow of all the Blacks leaving from the South and going up north, right? So how do we do that? We're gonna come down harder. So we're gonna levy taxes, levy fees on them. So if you wanna go travel up north, then you're gonna have to pay. And this wasn't just something that was like an unspoken rule. This was enforced by many government officials. And in some cases, you would have the opposite, where white Southerners would say, okay, fine. You're leaving because you don't feel like you're being treated fairly. You have bad working conditions. So here's what we'll do. We'll try to make some improvements regarding farming, and we will try to keep Black people in our states and in our areas. He did this by trying to partner with historically Black universities like Alabama Polytechnic Institute, also AKA Auburn University, and the infamous Tuskegee Institute, which maybe you guys have heard of regarding the Tuskegee experiment. Okay, Ms. Wood said, my mother constantly told us to remember to stay in our place and never look white people in the eye in public. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I feel like there's a lot more that my dad experienced, but he's kind of blocked it out. And as we were talking, he had like a few revelations, and he did say, like, you know what? I think the reason why I felt like things were so normal is just that we just knew what our place was. And he was like, there were certain places we just did not go. We knew where we could go. We knew what we could do. We knew what we could get away with, and we knew what we couldn't get away with. And that was his experience. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Wood. So the Red Summer is also happening during this time period as well. So it's important that we talk about that. So just as like a backdrop, we had World War I is ending in 1918. And what happens is during the war, a lot of white men went to go fight. And so this left a huge gaping hole in the labor market. And so who do you think ends up taking their place? If you guess Black people, you're right. So these Black people come, they are able to get these jobs. And what do you think happens when the war ends? Conflict. So a lot of the former white soldiers are coming back. Obviously, they want their jobs, but there are now Black people in those jobs. This causes a lot of tension, and it culminates in something called the Red Summer. And what this basically is a string of racial violence and riots and white supremacist terror that engulfs not only the South, but also spreads to the North. And this is like, I'm sorry, does somebody have something to say? No? Was that you, Ms. Williams?
No, it wasn't me. What did Irma said that they took our jobs? That's what Irma wrote. Tiffany said conflicts and money.
Yes, yes. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, you were getting into the Red Summer, and I was thinking about the other guest speaker that I had that was a professor who wanted to do a presentation on the Red Summer, and I'm going to try to get back in touch with him.
Oh, awesome. I hope he's able to come talk to us.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. So hundreds of Black people died during this time period, and this racial violence also continues well into the 1920s, 1921, 1922, 1923. So this is also a huge problem because in the North, you would think, oh, well, why is there these racial riots? Well, because there is even more of an influx of Black people coming to the North. This scares white people. They don't want them there. They may have agreed with them being free, but they certainly didn't want to live next to them. And this is going to create a lot of tension. Obviously, Black people are going to start advocating more for their rights. I should say advocating even more, right? Because they've always advocated for their rights. But they're going to start advocating more for their rights. And again, this is going to cause a lot of death and beatings, lynchings, and other types of violence. It also is going to see the insurgents, the re-emergence of the KKK. People are going to, especially in the North, start flocking to the KKK. And in addition to that, the KKK, on the other hand, is going to start encouraging Blacks to migrate north. So they do that by continuing their terror campaign. And then also many white supremacists in the South enacted even harsher Black codes. So this was like a really rough time period for Black Americans. And it didn't matter if they were in the North or the South, they still experienced racial violence, and they still had a fear of that racial violence. And you heard yesterday, my dad talked about the fact that he didn't experience being called to his face the N-word until he came north. And he was in Pennsylvania, and he wanted to go into an establishment with his friend, and they said, we don't serve N-words here. So that was the reality, whether you were in the North or the South. Now, obviously, the North was a little bit better because you did have a little bit more educational opportunities and economic opportunities, but the racial violence and the horrible language was still there. Another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is labor unions, right? And their role that they played in a lot of this conflict. So Blacks actually were not allowed to join labor unions. And can anybody tell me why this would be a big deal that Blacks could not join labor unions? Yes, Miranda, you better say that. Sorry, got a little hype. So let me repeat my question. Because can anyone tell me why labor unions, why it was important that Blacks were kept out of labor unions? Anybody?
James, you want to chime in?
Go ahead, James.
I think it was thought that African American workers would work for far less than the laborers were. So if they joined white unions, they would constantly undercut them, but being like, "I'll break that strike for you." Like I'm not going to use any leverage because I don't care, or whatever the stereotype would have been.
Miranda, you want to jump in? Good job, James.
Okay. So, basically, sorry, I just woke up. So I think that a lot of white people didn't want, people of color to join labor unions because labor unions would have helped protect the rights that were already being infringed upon. Like, with labor unions, they were much more likely to be able to right the wrong actions that might have been taken against them in a job or office situation, or any job in general. If someone had said something, if someone had done something because of their skin, they were going to get protected because of these labor unions. And so if they joined, it would be a problem for all the people who wanted these people to go back to where they originally were.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miranda.
No
Kane, you had
problem.
your hand up?
Oh,
Yes.
Dell wrote, hold on, before you go, Kane, hold on 1 second. She said, labor unions protect their workers, and since the unions weren't accepting Black people into their groups, then the Black workers weren't being protected. It made it extremely easy to take advantage and exploit Black workers. Okay, go ahead, Kane, sorry.
So I think not only do they do that to take advantage of the Black people, they did that to deter them from continuing to migrate here, because they came here for better wealth opportunity and like better jobs. So now that they don't offer that better wealth, they probably would not consider moving to the North. So I think that it's also used to deter the Black workers from coming to the North in the first place.
These are all excellent answers. Awesome job, all of you. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All right. So, and we're going to talk about, we're going to actually zero in on a particular strike, a labor strike that happened in Philadelphia momentarily. Should we have enough time for that? All right, so yesterday I introduced this website and it's 11:40. So we're gonna skip this. And if we have time at the end, I'll go back and you guys can explore it. But I can also put the link in the chat box for anybody that wants to just explore on their own. And I mentioned this yesterday. Okay. Okay, so we know that Philadelphia was a major destination place for a lot of Blacks who were coming up from the South during the Great Migration. And one thing that people don't realize is how segregated racially Philadelphia was. And honestly, if we're going to be honest, it still is. So this is a map of Philadelphia, and this map is color coded. So the green on this map highlights, and this is a map from 1940, FYI. So the green on this map highlights the areas that are best to live in. B is desirable, or blue, I should say, is desirable. Yellow is the declining areas, and red is like, don't move there, right? Also code word for, that's where all the Blacks and colored people are. And so this history of redlining and kind of forcing people to only live in one community plays a role in why the economic disparity between Blacks and people of color is so high. Oh, Melina said redlining a racial wedge. Yeah, so in the red areas, that was typically where all the Black folks lived. And the green areas were typically where all the white folks lived. And this, if you were Black and you wanted to move out of your neighborhood, you would not be able to do so because no bank would give you a mortgage to move into those areas. So in that way, they were able to keep Blacks from attaining greater economic wealth, because we all know that in the United States, and in many other parts of the world, the way that you measure wealth is through property. So if you were lucky enough to be Black and able to get a mortgage, you could only get a mortgage in certain areas. You certainly cannot get a mortgage in these areas where there were majority white inhabitants of the neighborhood. So as you can imagine, this caused that generational wealth that Black people are still trying so hard to attain. This made it unattainable for many of them because they could not own homes. And when they could own homes, they could only own homes in the Black areas. And the property prices in those areas were kept really low purposefully so that you could never really attain wealth. And even though things are a little bit better here in Philadelphia and in the US in general, redlining and segregation is still very huge. Philadelphia is one of the most segregated cities in America, unfortunately. It also kept Blacks from moving from one area to the other because they were class-based. And this is also true as well. So even later on, as Blacks are able to move into more neighborhoods, you had only certain Blacks. So like in this area that I live in West Oak Lane, this is traditionally a middle-class Black area. And where I'm from, North Philly, a lot of Black people who lived in North Philly always aspired to be able to buy a home in this neighborhood. But before Blacks lived here, this was a heavily like Jewish neighborhood. And then many Jewish people, when Blacks started moving in, many of them started moving out. They moved further out, and not just Jewish people, but also other white people who lived in the area started moving further out. So they moved out into like Elkins Park. They moved out into, what else is out there? Help me out, Ms. Williams. Cheltenham.
Yeah, Cheltenham, Abington. Certain parts of Abington. So Abington, where I live, was segregated. So there are certain areas in Abington that they allow Black people to live.
Yes.
Which is why, even today, the elementary schools out here are segregated where there's a higher population of Black students that attend one elementary school as opposed to the other four.
Yeah. Because I would imagine that the housing prices in those neighborhoods are even higher.
Yeah, and they have what's it called? Section 8 or
okay.
Reduced
public housing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to show you what this map looks like up close. And I'm going to put this link in the chat box as well, but you guys can like play around with it. It's really interesting. Macs make it hard to play with things like these because you got to be real, the mouse is real sensitive. All right, so this map is really interesting because it not only shows you the areas traditionally that are considered best, still desirable, definitely declining and hazardous, but it also shows what that area of the city looks like in 2015 by race. So once again, you can see that most Blacks and people of color, right, Hispanic people, live in areas that are considered hazardous, even to this day. So if you want to talk about the effects, that redlining continues to have on our population in 2020, we're looking at it right here. Now, of course, a lot of these areas are being in a process of being transformed through gentrification. And so I would imagine, and Ms. Williams, you let me know what you think, that probably 15 years from now, this map might look a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh, Ms. Wood said, Nicetown, Tioga, located between Erie, Ave, and Wayne, was very mixed upper middle class. Yes. Now it's completely Black. And that's actually, it's so interesting because when we moved out of North Philadelphia, the first place we moved and bought a house in was Nicetown. So yeah. All right, so how many of you have ever driven up City Line Avenue? How many of you have ever shopped at that Target? I think is it Monument Road? I think it's Monument Road.
Yeah, I think so. It's Monument because that's the exit for Belmont Plateau and all of that.
Yep. Well, James, I wouldn't correlate gentrification with the city getting safer. Crime has just been declining just in general around the United States. Crime has been declining. So even though it seems crazy because people, you know, there's a lot of like death by guns and things like that. Generally speaking, crime has actually gotten better in many different places outside of gentrification. Somebody said, yeah, literally yesterday. All right, so if you've ever driven by that Target, all of that area used to look like what you're viewing right now in front of you. And that area was, James said, you know, and James, we can, you know, that's an important point, and we can address that. We need to address that when we're done with this. So keep that in mind. So yeah, it was an amusement park, you guys. It was called Woodside Park. And it was one of the biggest in Philadelphia. Everybody wanted to go there. It had a swimming pool with like sand, rides. If you guys click on this link, it'll take you to like more pictures and stuff like that. And again, I'll put that in the chat box for y'all to have. But it looked completely different. Now, of course, there is this stigma that Black people can't swim. What people don't tell you is the reason why a lot of Black people can't swim is not because they didn't want to, it's because they didn't have the opportunities to learn. And why didn't they have the opportunities to learn? Anybody want to take a guess before I say it?
Segregation, Irma said.
Good, segregation. Black people. Oh, Cam, I found that out firsthand. What did you find out firsthand, Cam? What did you find out firsthand? Separate but equal. Yes. We could not go to pools. We could not go to beaches. They were segregated. And in fact, when Black people did try to go swimming or go to a pool, and they would like protest and like go anyway and dip their foot in the pool, guess what they would do? If you get drain the entire pool, clean it and bleach it, and then refill it back up again, then you would be right. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, we cannot, or mini beaches, riots. Yeah. And if you guys ever see the movie Dorothy Dandridge, she's played by Halle Berry.
You know they didn't see that movie.
Huh?
Did you know they didn't see that movie?
I know, but you guys should watch Dorothy Dandridge by Halle Berry. You guys probably did not see it, but you should watch it, and it includes that scene in there. So a lot of Black people, you know, the way that they would cool off in the summer is they would open fire hydrants. And everyone's saying, oh, that's a horrible thing. You're taking water away from the neighborhood. If there's a fire, you won't be able to get water. But they had to be resourceful. So that was the only way that many of them were able to cool down in the summer, by using the fire hydrants. And so when we talk about Black people not wanting to swim or not being able to swim, it's not because they didn't want to. It's not because they can't. It's not because they can't excel at swimming, I should say, but it's because they did not have the opportunity to do so. And no more was that more prevalent than right here in Philadelphia, West Philadelphia to be exact, where that Target is, at the Woodside Amusement Park. That is their swimming pool. And it was beautiful. Everybody wanted to go there. And guess who was not allowed to go swimming right here in Philadelphia in that swimming pool? If you guess Black people, you would be correct. So they ended up having to sue in order to be able to go swimming in this pool. So they were allowed in an amusement park. They just were not allowed to go swimming. So they had to sue. You're right, Kenneth and Miss Williams. Irma said, I see Black kids do it today. Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of habit now. No, they do it today, James. I know when I grew up, we used fire hydrants, and I didn't understand why, because we did have access to our local swimming pool, and that's where I learned how to swim. But I never realized why the fire hydrants were such a, why we did that. And then when I became a history teacher, I was like, oh, wow. It's kind of something that, because of what happened, it continues to this day. So Blacks actually sued to be allowed to go swimming in this pool. They won, but then shortly after they won, guess what happened to the amusement park?
They took it down.
Bam, it closed.
That's the same thing that happened out here in Willow Grove. So a lot of people don't know where there was a Willow Grove amusement park right where the mall is.
What?
Yeah.
That.
And it was segregated, and once people pushed for it to be integrated, they got rid of it.
So isn't that crazy? And so people are like, oh, the South is so bad. But we're talking about North now. We're talking about Philadelphia, where there was millions of Black people living, and they were not allowed to go swimming. They would rather shut down an entire park where they're making millions of dollars than to allow Blacks to go swimming in the swimming pool. That's how deep, that's how entrenched this ideology was. The more you know. That will be more money. Yeah, they definitely wouldn't bring it back again, but a lot of the pools in Philadelphia were segregated. So if it was segregated in the South, in the North, imagine how it was in the South. So Black people not knowing how to swim is not because they don't want to know. It was because historically they've been kept from doing it. And then once you've had generations where you don't go swimming, you know, it just kind of continues. My mom can't swim. My dad cannot swim. I learned how to swim. I actually taught myself. I got thrown into the pool when I was about 10 years old in the deep end. And it was either sink or swim to the ledge. And I swam to the ledge, thankfully. But yeah, that's how I learned how to swim. Same type issues at Smith Playground. Yep. Yep. Okay. Melina said I felt that, but instead I drowned. No, okay. Oh God, can you imagine that I wouldn't be able to be here with you guys right now? Melina said there's a plaza in South Philly for Asian supermarkets and a Vietnamese sandwich shop, and it's getting replaced with affordable housing. The plaza was first Asian supermarket in the tri-state area. I heard something about that, in an Asian group that I follow is trying to protest it and trying to keep that from happening. Viet-led, yes. Thank you, Melina. Yes, Viet-led. They do awesome work. They're wonderful allies as well. Thank you for that, Melina. I know about Viet-led. I was on a panel where they were there. Melina says she's a student coordinator. That's awesome, Melina. I love it. Yes, amazing. You guys are such amazing kids. Y'all just are amazing. Melina, if there's a petition or something, reach out to Ms. Williams so she can share it with me. FYI. Yeah, I just read a news story about that not too long ago. All right. So yesterday, my dad talked about being segregated when he came to the movies. That wasn't just in the South, but it was also in the North. So this is right here. Anybody ever been to the Liberty Place? If you ever been to the Liberty Place, not the Liberty Bell, but the Liberty Place. If you've ever been to the Liberty Place, which runs from Market to Chestnut, excuse me, you might have come across, if it was decades ago, these two main theaters, the Fox Theater and the Milburn, which later becomes the Stanley Theatre. And these were the theaters that my dad would go to. And he talks about the fact that when he came to Philadelphia, he actually had to go up on the balcony. Black people could not sit in the main part of the theater down below. They had to sit in the balcony. And that was, again, right here in Philadelphia. And this is the Stanley Theatre. It was located on the corner of 16th and Market. All right, so let's talk about the Philadelphia Transit Strike of 1944. So can anybody tell me what major event is happening in the year 1944?
Luca said World War II. Lydia said World War II.
Yes.
James.
Oh, Ms. Wood said her parents were afraid to take her to the theater downtown, and they went to the bandbox in Germantown. Wow. I'm so glad you're in this class with us, Ms. Wood. Yes, World War II, absolutely. So this is an important, oh my God, it's 12 o'clock. Should I continue?
We could probably pick up from here tomorrow. Irma said yes, continue. I don't know what the other students have to do.
What do you guys think? Can you guys comment in the chat box if you guys have somewhere to go? I don't want to continue if this is really brief though. It's not like,
oh, if it's brief.
I mean, yeah, there's like two-minute videos and then just like a really quick explanation. As long as we finish before 1. Whoa.
I think we're good.
We will be done before then. Okay, I got you. All right, Spanish starts at 12:30. Okay, so boom, knock this out real quick. So World War II is happening. We're in the throes of World War II. The U.S. Has entered the war. Philadelphia is a huge location for repairing ships. We have our naval yard downtown. And also it was a huge manufacturing place for other things that were needed for the war effort. So public transportation was really important because it took people where they needed to go. It took the workers where they needed to go. Well, in 1944, they decided, okay, a lot of our men have been drafted, so we're going to need to bring in some more workers. And someone was like, light bulb, let's hire the blacks and put them in like driving positions and conductor positions. And people were like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then the white workers were like, no, not a good idea, bad idea. And so they decided, it was 3 men, Dixon, McMenamin, Thompson, Thompson, and Carney. And all 4 of them led this strike. They took our jobs, no. Exactly. So they went on strike August 1st. And they weren't striking for better wages. They weren't striking for poor working conditions. They weren't striking for health care. They were striking because they did not want blacks to take on positions in those higher paying jobs. Did y'all hear what I said? Mm-hmm. Philadelphia, 1944. They're not striking for anything to do with betterment for their job. They're striking to keep black people from attaining higher positions, like being a conductor or being a driver. So in order to get these folks back to work, they ended up having to bring in troops to ride the buses and to get people basically to stop striking. So I'm not going to tell you guys more. I'm going to show you guys these 2 sources. One is a primary source and the second is a secondary source. So I'm going to play Ms. Elistine Ashlock's first, and then we will play John Johnson. And then that'll be it.
It was the jobs that the people of color weren't offered the privilege of a good job like the other people were. And especially, there was a strike, the Charlie strike, and they had to bring in the guards, the National Guards, to ride the trolley cars. When President Roosevelt sent in the troops, it was a fine move to help disperse of the situation and to let those that wanted those jobs and were able to perform get there and do it. There was a driver and a conductor that halfway back in the trolley that collected your fare. They could do that. And they showed them that they could do it. It was peaceful though, because my family was one of my mother, especially. She gave them slices of cake or little sandwiches. This was done as a neighborhood project, more or less. And gave them hot chocolate, keep them warm. But they stood on the side. It wasn't a lot of noise at all.
And so I do want to say, even though she said this was peaceful, I think she's specifically talking about the fact that it was peaceful the neighborhood, like the Black neighborhood, rallied together to help those who had taken those jobs. But the reality is there was violence that happened as a result of this. And in one instant, unfortunately, a 13-year-old Black child was shot and killed during the strike by a group of white men right here in Philadelphia. And so it's crazy when you think about these things. You know, usually you're taught history is like the South, the South, the South, the South. It was horrible to Black people, right? In the North, they're the great saviors. And reality is, a lot of times the North didn't look that much different from the South.
In 1944, Philadelphia was a mecca. Philadelphia was the third largest producer of military material.
Sorry, I'm just gonna make it bigger, guys.
Every factory housed a number of employees. You had the shipbuilding taking place, railroad. We were the third most crucial part of our success in the war overseas. So it was crucial that we not have any disruptions within the transportation of the of the staff that manned these buildings, the workers that did the shipbuilding and so. We were crucial. PTC and the Philadelphia Rapid Transportation Employees Union, they worked hand in hand together to ensure that the Black members were not afforded an opportunity to advance. And also they worked hand in hand to ensure that Black people were not hired. And when you think about the war and what President Roosevelt was facing, with what we were accomplishing in Germany and Japan, he was kind of taken back by the fact that he had these guys over here in Philadelphia who felt as if their issues were far more important than the world's issues. Their fascist actions, you know, we're trying to make sure we're being more democratic, but they're looking out more for themselves. And that wasn't a behavior that President Roosevelt was willing to tolerate, considering we had everything on all cylinders operating as far as this war. And to lose ground because of a number of people who felt as if they were privileged was not going to be tolerated. So to ensure that we had success and also we didn't lose any ground, he sent in the National Guard.
Okay. So Miranda says she learned a lot about what we're talking about from Adam Ruins Everything. I'm gonna check that out. The South was out front with their stuff, but up north it was subtle, passive aggressive, don't cross the unspoken lines. Absolutely. But I would also argue too that in many ways it was also, Northerners were also up front. I think as time has gone on, the North has become much more subtle with how they display their racism. But I think as this strike has shown, right, sometimes it became right up front. And you know, also this strike continues the tradition of Black children continuing to be victims of white supremacy terrorist violence. And 13 years old, no way should a child have been brought into this conflict. No way should a 13-year-old have been shot and killed because of this. But this is just par for the course, unfortunately. And it is part of the history. And that's why it's so important that you guys learn about this history and that you learn about these things. Because if we don't learn about them, then they continue to happen. When we all learn about them, not just Black people, not just white people, right? But anybody who lives in America, when we learn about these things, it makes us more compassionate. It makes us more empathetic. And it makes us make better decisions in our adulthood, or at least that's what I hope. So hopefully you guys learning about this will make you in some way be able to address these remaining issues that we have in our society so that we can live in a society that is just and that is equal and that is fair for everybody. Yeah, when it came to employment and money, yeah, this is true. Ms. Williams, do you have anything to add?
No, I wanted to make our announcements before we end, just to remind you of that.
Oh yes. Do you want me to pull it up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, everybody, please don't leave just yet. Just give us like 2 seconds.
And some people have, and that's fine. I will post this announcement on our Google Classroom page, so hopefully everyone will see it. But starting next week, we're still going to work on the AB schedule, and we're on the A schedule, which means next week we'll start on Tuesday. Class will be on Tuesday. But we're moving class from 11 a.m. to now 1 p.m. to 1:50. And we're doing that to accommodate both my schedule and Ms. Ridgway's schedule, so that we can still have our one large class instead of splitting up into multiple periods of African American history. And that's what works best for the both of us. And I hope that you're able to join us and that it doesn't present a conflict with any of you either, as it's outside of the quote unquote school day, as it's after all the rest of the periods. So hopefully that works for you. If it does not, we will continue to record the classes. They will be on Ms. Ridgway's YouTube page, which I posted on Google Classroom as well, for you all to subscribe to the page so that you can follow along with the videos as they are recorded and posted. So I don't have to continually pull them from YouTube to Google Classroom. So, did I miss anything, Ms. Ridgway?
Nope, that was it. We enjoyed being together so much that we did not want to separate.
Yeah. John has a good question. John said, what's going to happen to our African American history periods then? Well, John, if there's any work that you need to do as far as maybe writing reflective journals or anything like that, you can do that during that period. You can eat during that period. You can sleep during that period. You can do other work during that period. So that's what's going to happen during that other period. However, if you do need me and you need to ask me any questions about any assignments, you can reach me via email. If you'd like to meet on Google Meets during that period to chat, conference for whatever reason, you can email me and we'll set that up as well. So I'm still available. We're just not holding class during that period in the way that we do here.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like a free period, office hour type of situation. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. Yep. And the same with my kids. I'm going to be posting this on Google Classroom later today, but it'll be the same thing. The recordings will be available. I'll be available in certain capacities during our periods. So either it'll be live where you guys can log into our office hours, or you can send me a message via email, and all that information will be posted for you guys. But our class, we're going to hold officially from 1 to 1:50 p.m. And Ms. Williams, we're going to share this with them, right?
Yeah.
So you guys, you'll see like each week we have it mapped out for you. So it'll tell you like what day we're actually having the class and what day we're not. Or if we have no class because it's Memorial Day. And of course, Friday for everyone will be time to like catch up on any work that you might need.
Any videos you missed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we feel like this way we don't get burned out. You guys don't get burned out. And we're also just still able to be together and take in all this knowledge, which I think is awesome. It's so much better than doing it period by period because we might only get a few kids here and a few kids there. But this way we all have like a period, we're all together. And I always feel like 2 teachers are always better than 1, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's just that. So I wanted to go back really quick before you guys leave. I think this is really important to address. I think it was James. Was it what James said?
It was about gentrification and
yes, right. So I just have a reminder. So James said a park that my parents had to walk through used to have heroin needles strewn about. Now yuppie screen movies there. It's a big difference. And you're absolutely right. And I think we have to question why these things don't get cleaned up until certain people move into the area, right? Why is it that it's not because, as someone who lived in North Philadelphia, it's not that that poor people don't want to live in clean environments, right? It's not that poor people don't want to go to nice parks. That's not the issue at all. I can assure you, as someone who was poor growing up and lived in the projects in North Philly, blocks away from Temple University, that's not the case at all. And as Ms. Williams put in the chat box, I love Kendi, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's called space racism. Love that terminology. But you have to ask yourself, why do areas only get cleaned up when they get gentrified, right? And the reality is that the resources are not there. A lot of times monetarily, we read it all about Kendi's new book. Yes. Funding, absolutely. Many of these things are just not available for people of color who live in poor areas. And so the question we should be asking ourselves is, why do these resources become available? And now a lot of people might say, well, yeah, resources, and I get it, but why can't they just clean up the parks themselves? And the reality is that sometimes that does happen. But you also have people who, you're going to have higher drug usage, higher uses of alcohol abuse in poor areas, because that is what people are using, unfortunately, to alleviate the pain and the suffering that they are experiencing in life. And so when you have higher instances of these things, that's going to result in the damaging of infrastructure, and because of addiction, right? And so it's the same thing with the indigenous population, Native Americans. Many Native Americans are, everyone's always like, they're alcoholics. Like, what is wrong with them? Why are they so prone to be alcoholics? Because their life is hard, and it has been hard. And a lot of times people deal with their problems through addiction. That is how addiction starts. And so it's not because they're bad people. It's not because they're people who just like to drink. No, it stems to a lot of the systemic racism that they have experienced in their life. And as a result, it's hard for people to do better because A, a lot of times you don't know better, or B, even if you know better, you don't have the funding or the resources to be able to do what needs to be done for your neighborhood. So that's why they're poor, because of addiction. And the addiction is a result of the horrible life experiences that they've had. Racism is like a cancer in space. No one can hear you and draw the red line. How about that, James? They just don't allocate it due to lack of value. Yeah. Also, a lot of times that's why they are poor, because of addiction, because Europeans introduced them to, yes, alcohol. And that is so true. And that happened in Africa as well. For those of you that don't know, colonization, one of the ways that they were able to colonize populations is that they purposely gave them addictive substances, which made it easier to take over, like rum. Exactly. Yeah. So that was a lot. I hope you guys have learned some things today. We will see those of you who are able to come tomorrow, if you're able to. It's going to be like our last
Off day.
And then next week we're going to go to the 2 classes a week schedule. But yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Thanks, John. Have a great day too.
And John.
Thanks, Lydia.
Devon, Lydia, James. Thank you.
Bye,
So guys.
Bye, Evangeline.
Bye, Tiff.
Melina, Kyoto.
Gia. Gia, is it Gia? Said to check your email.
No. Yes.
Okay. Bye, Bye, Andy. Bye, Ken.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Yes, you stay safe.
Thanks, Nissa. You too.
And may you guys be blessed with all of those of you that are fasting. May you guys be blessed with the rest of your fast, because I know it's real in this field. Bye, Miss Wesley. Bye, Miranda. Yes, you too. Please don't get sick, y'all. Stay safe. Okay, I'm gonna stop the